fear and lies. Now, fear has been a big part of my life. And often, when fear is the motivating emotion, people tend to lie about it to themselves first and then others. But I'm going to take that a step further. When the lower emotions are the ones that are motivating something, people tend to lie about it to themselves first and then others. They rationalize away why they feel the anger they do. Now, I first became aware of this with like convicts and like shitty neighborhoods and like violence. You're afraid, so you put on a front. You are aggressive and angry because you're afraid. This is the way you learn to deal with things. And if you don't lash out, you're gonna be a victim. And that's just the way it is. Until you start hurting other people, you're gonna be a victim forever. And that tends to just be the way it is. But the fear is still the motivating factor in it. Even when you take the person out of that environment, their brain is now hardwired that way. And unless they address it, unless they deal with what is making them afraid to begin with, they will never change. It's just going to be that way. And I never really saw it much beyond that, but I never really had much experience outside of that. And as I've been listening to people talk on YouTube and occasionally reading people's comments on these videos, like, especially towards women, there is like an incredible amount of what I read as fear. Like, guys are afraid of talking to girls. Not all, obviously, but there is a large portion of guys that are afraid of talking to girls. They're afraid of losing a relationship, and they're afraid of the girl cheating on them. And like, the reaction towards a lot of this is anger. Like, guys that aren't even in relationships are afraid of a girl cheating on them. And so they're like angry about it. This is the way I read it. And so there's a lot of anger directed at women, a lot of unresolved anger, I'll call it. And that really surprised me. Now, I never had a problem with like getting women to like me. I understand. Like, if I don't take steps to disarm it, women are gonna be afraid of me. There's nothing I can do about it. Like, I look, in my opinion, kind of like a Hun. Like, I'm stocky. I move kind of like Jason Voorhees. Like, unless I take some kinds of steps, I would, if I was a woman, I would run from me, and not necessarily run, but if I saw me walking down the street, I'd turn around and go back inside my house too. I don't know what the fuck he's gonna do, and I know what I know what he's thinking. Now, granted, I'm not thinking that. I could care less, but from their perspective, I understand why they would perceive it that way. And occasionally, it like the fear does piss me off. It pisses me off far more with guys though, because then it's like, why the fuck are you afraid of me? Women, I understand why they're afraid of me, like in general. So, like that, when people are afraid of me, it's like a dog. I've talked about this before, but like, getting women to like me has never been the biggest hurdle for me. And talking to women has never been the biggest hurdle for me. Like, I used to always say, I could just go stand out in front of a 7-Eleven and just talk to the girls that show up until one will take me home. Like, that's a way of dealing with things. If you want to meet girls, just go hang out at some place and hit on the girls that show up. Do so with caution. Like, It's not like 1970s Matthew McConaughey anymore. You can't go around slapping asses. Leave space. But nevertheless, like that's not the biggest issue. And so like guys that have that issue, I try to see things from their perspective. And like there seems to be a lot of fear of rejection, things like that, where they're afraid of talking to a girl because they believe they know they're gonna get shot down, and so therefore that gets transferred into like anger. It's better than feeling like I'm a loser who can't talk to a girl that fuck that she's a whore. Like that is a rationalized process. you know, if there's nothing wrong with me, there's something wrong with them. And the answer in my way of thinking about things, the answer is always like it's always my fault. If things aren't working, it's my fault. You can't. That's the only thing you have control over. And then I started seeing it with like comic books and movies, and there's like legitimate anger towards this. And now I don't believe this is actually spawned by a fear reaction, but it is something very similar. Like they care about these characters and things like that, and it's being ignored, acting like you don't matter, acting like you don't count. And like these were like their things for quite off their history basically. And now it's like, well, you don't count. And the what I would compare it to is if somebody like walks into a store and just cuts me in line like I'm not there. I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And like it's gonna be like you act like I ain't here. Fuck you then. If you want to behave that way, like I have to respond aggressively. Otherwise, they're gonna keep doing it. So like, if you treat somebody like they don't exist, that's gonna make them angry. Uh, that is going to inspire anger. And the people doing it in like the Hollywood world like relish the fact that they are making them angry. And then like the people who are being made angry by this relish the fact that they upset the Hollywood people on like other shit. It's it like Hollywood and its audience like have become in this like sick relationship where it's like symbiotic hatred on both sides. Um, it's strange. I don't know how to explain it yet, but I've watched it for some time. At first, like I just thought it was guys making fun of comic books that were stupid and movies that were stupid. Like I mean, you have to understand. Like, I haven't liked movies in so long. Like I saw 28 Days Later in the theater and thought it was dumb as fuck. I saw X-Men 3. It was like this is stupid. Like I could tolerate it because it was X-Men characters, but like I just didn't go for like the X-Men movies. I just wasn't with it. And then I saw the Avengers movie and I was like, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Um, I don't know how else to explain it. But like I said, I saw Gladiator. I was like, this is fucking stupid as fuck. So like I've been so far out of movies that I stopped caring about them basically at like 2003, in that range is when I'm not doing this. This is dumb. So like I don't have a lot invested in it in the same way. Even video games, like I play video games, but I'm still playing stuff for the PS4. Like I didn't play video games for like 10 years, so there was a lot of stuff to catch up on. There's a lot of PS4 and Xbox 360 games that I have never even played. So like I ain't wasting money on a PlayStation 5. And like they want you to be always online with the Xbox and the PlayStation. Fuck that. Like I'll never take that shit online. Like no. No, it comes on the disc, or I don't want it. Not important. I'm not important here. But there is like this synergistic hostility right now and like all these industries where like the developers of movies and video games hate their audience and their audience hates them. And like the developers are intentionally ignoring the audience and intentionally enraging them and like relishing the fact that they are enraging them, and then they act like victims that the audience hates them and says horrible things about them, but it's like they're in they're like egging on the hatred to begin with. So like I don't think that is necessarily like a fear thing. That seems, like I said, partly being ignored and partly just synergistic. Like I don't have any grasp on like Hollywood people. I can imagine the emotions they might feel, but like, they're like aliens almost to me. Um, I don't know what to make of them, but you know, fear is dominant so often in our society. It's like everywhere, um, and usually in my experience, like the response to fear is anger. People cover up fear with anger. People cover up weakness with anger. Like that's the way to deal with it. And I don't know. It seems like it's a time bomb just slowly ticking away, and no one wants to do anything about it because no one wants to acknowledge what it really is, and no one wants to acknowledge their role in it, and no one wants to be honest about it. So it's just going to get worse and worse. And obviously, this exists in the political situation, which is just another level of ridiculous that I can't even get into. But anyway, yes, people use anger to hide weakness or emotions that are from weakness or would be considered weakness, however you want to slice it. Take it for what it's worth.